Chapter 7. Comprehension of the Craft. A cool autumn breeze wafted past Kai's face as he followed Arden into the forest behind his tower. The leaves from the trees had started changing colors from brilliant green to shades of yellow, orange, and brown. Kai had thought that Azalea was beautiful during the summer, but it was stunning during fall. The splash of colors made the landscape almost glow. The crunch of discarded leaves echoed under his feet with each step he took. Kai shivered as he wrapped his scarf a bit tighter around his neck and put his hands in the pockets of his robe. He had spent the entirety of his life, till now, in a much warmer climate. The changing seasons of Azalea would take some getting used to. Arden, on the other hand, seemed completely unfazed by the cooler temperature, braving the cold without a scarf or cloak. They had been walking for some time now. Not that Kai was complaining. He was greatly enjoying the chance for fresh air and to observe the landscape around him. He had spent most of his time cooped up in Arden's tower, practicing his spells with renewed excitement. After he had learned to tap into the magic around him, casting became much easier. He had moved on from simply lighting a candle to summoning elements within his palm and moving objects around at will. In fact, Kai had come to find that while summoning elements drained him, it was much less intensive to move existing objects around to his advantage. As such, commanding a fallen tree branch to levitate and smack an opponent upside the head was much simpler than trying to fry them with a lightning bolt. However, Kai could definitely tell evocation was not his affinity. Any attack spell he cast left him feeling drained and exhausted afterwards. Arden had assured him that even if it wasn't his affinity, in time, it would get easier. Kai had also been branching out and reading up on other areas of magic. Arden had given him lessons on alchemy, teaching Kai how to brew potions. Kai thought since he had spent so much time cooking, maybe alchemy was his affinity. But the poison antidote he'd tried to brew had actually come out brown and slightly burnt, which had been a wonder to even Arden. Kai had also tried his hand at summoning spirits, but this had very minor success as well, as the spirit that appeared before him had left almost instantly, without answering a single one of Kai's questions. Divination proved equally difficult. Kai stood over a bowl of water with herbs mixed into it. He swirled the water with his finger over and over while muttering "Aspecia." Seers could see pictures in the water, supposedly of what was to come. It took several hours and exhausted him, and Kai only got a flash of 2 images, falling snow and blue flame. This, too, clearly wasn't his area of expertise. He had asked Arden what the images meant, and Arden told him even the most talented seers often have trouble interpreting the pictures, but those with the affinity could see more than those without it. This morning, however, when Kai had been engrossed in a cup of tea, a plate of eggs, and a book on transmutation, Arden had proclaimed that today Kai would be focusing on dueling magic, which is how they came to be walking into the woods behind the castle. Arden finally stopped when the path they had been following opened up to a small clearing. Kai could no longer see the castle from this point, and they were well covered by shrubbery. He wondered why the secrecy around the lesson. "Is there a reason we came out here instead of practicing in the tower?" Kai asked. Arden nodded. "Several. For starters, me shooting evocation spells at you in an enclosed space is guaranteed to reduce it to rubble. There are dueling grounds in which most other mages practice sparring with each other, but I don't really want the other mages to be aware of any strengths or weaknesses you may have in your magic. At least till we find your affinity." Kai nodded, figuring that was Arden's way of saying if others knew his weakness now, they would no doubt try to exploit it. Thus, the enclosed clearing, far away from prying eyes. Kai had done his best to avoid other mages since his arrival at the castle, trying to quickly learn the spells he needed to hold his own. He knew he would never be accepted unless he could prove that, while he may be human, he was still a mage, able to stand with them or against them as their equal. So, almost every waking moment he had spent devoted to that end. Plus, it will take some practice before your defensive magic is strong enough to fight toe-to-toe with another mage. Since you are human, we will need to focus more time on your defensive spells than most other acolytes do," Arden added. "Why is that?" Kai inquired. "Because other races have some form of natural defensive capabilities," Arden clarified. Goblins, for example, have skin no thicker than humans and can easily be damaged. Their bone structure, however, is harder than steel, and they have an interlocking rib cage to protect vital organs. Same goes for dwarves. Their skeletal structure is similar. A shift skin is tougher, and their bones are flexible in their natural state. Plus, they can change their shape into animals at will, swapping from easy prey to fearsome opponents in an instant. Orcs, of course, are not only massive, but have skin as thick as a dragon's hide. Many mages have tried to take down an orc and succeeded in nothing more than pissing them off. As with elves, Arden stated as he pulled an athame out of a sheath on his belt. Kai flinched slightly as Arden suddenly sliced the blade across the palm of his left hand, silver blood now staining the steel. Our skin and skeletons are not as strong as other races, however, we do possess a powerful innate healing ability, which means unless we suffer a fatal blow to the head or the heart, we are extremely difficult to kill. Arden held out his hand for Kai to see. Kai watched in amazement as the cut on Arden's hand stopped bleeding and mended itself in an instant. Arden cleaned the dagger before sheathing it. Then there are humans. You don't have any of the natural defenses the other races possess. You are also slow to heal injuries, and damage you sustain can be extensive. In comparison, you are like a squishy blood bag supported by a brittle bone structure. Kai scrunched his face up as he muttered, "That's a charming analogy." But a truthful one. You must first admit your weaknesses in order to realize your strengths. Do I have any? Kai inquired. Strengths, that is? 'Cause as a human, my area of expertise seems to reside in bleeding lots and breaking easily. I think you've got a few more strengths than that, kid. You might not have the same physical strengths as other races, but intellectual strengths can be just as important. You think quickly on your feet, and you are good at problem solving, which is essential for strategy. You are rational in difficult scenarios, but still feel empathy for others. And you are brave when you need to be. But you also don't disregard your fear. You're saying fear is a strength? Of course it is. It heightens senses, warns of danger, and is the basis for instinct. Don't disregard fear. It can be a sword or a crutch, depending on how it's wielded. The trick is allowing it to sharpen you without allowing it to cripple you. Kai silently pondered this. He hadn't ever considered emotional or intellectual strengths in a comparison with physical attributes. Also, he wasn't sure how being level-headed or quick-witted would help with a rampaging orc coming at him. For any physical traits you may be lacking, that is what defensive magic does. It levels the playing field when facing off against a stronger opponent. Speaking of, Arden waved his hand and muttered. Kai watched as a large barrier formed around the two of them, creating a large enclosing sphere. Just in case any stray fire gets away from us, Arden explained. He pointed at a spot about 20 feet in front of him. Kai, you stand there, he instructed. Kai immediately took his position as Arden cleared brush out of the line of sight between him and Kai with a wave of his hand. Now, this is going to require a lot of focus, Arden began. We're going to teach you to create a barrier, much like the one that surrounds us now. Even though it may not look like it, my focus is constant in order to maintain it. As you progress with your magic, you will learn how to maintain a barrier such as this while also casting other spells. But for right now, we just need to get to the point where the barrier you create lasts long enough and is strong enough to ward off any offensive magic coming toward you. Now clear your mind, focus, and repeat after me. Agira. Agira, Kai stated, clearing his mind and drawing from the magic within. Sure enough, a small barrier appeared around him for a moment and then dissipated. Kai could add defensive magic to the growing list of areas his affinity did not lie in. Even with that small effort, he felt like he'd just run up and down the stairs to Arden's tower 10 times. That's okay, Arden stated as Kai leaned over and caught his breath. Creating and maintaining a barrier takes immense energy. You'll get used to it. Considering how draining creating one for one moment was, Kai was absolutely stunned that Arden was maintaining a barrier this size without seeming the least bit winded. The clear difference in power between an acolyte and a maester. You up to trying again? Arden inquired. Kai nodded without hesitation, took a deep breath, and shouted in a determined tone, Agira! Several hours later, a small fireball hit Kai with the force of a falling tree. He had improved to the point that his shield held, but the force of the attack knocked him flat on his back. Kai sprawled out on the cold earth, trying to catch his breath. It was strange to remember that the air had felt chilly to him walking out here. Now it was a welcome respite to combat the sweat on his brow. "Good," Arden remarked as he walked over to where Kai lay. "You were able to hold the shield long enough to fend off the attack, but we still need to work on your stance. Attack spells can hit like a ton of bricks. If you aren't prepared, they'll take you to the ground. Then your opponent will have you." Arden leaned over where Kai lay, looking down at him. "Ready to try again?" Kai simply nodded, unable to speak much as he gasped for air. He started to push himself back up off the ground, and his arms shook from the weight. In truth, he was exhausted, but he wouldn't quit. Kai forced himself into a quivering stance and took a defensive position once again. Arden observed the effort it took for Kai to get up, seeming to just now realize how tired he was. He cast his attention toward the horizon. On second thought, it's starting to get late. How about we call it quits for today?" Kai shook his head, determined to prove he was capable. "No, I can try again," Kai insisted between breaths. Arden turned back to the rock he had been standing near and pulled a container and a cup out of his satchel. "Enough, kid," he stated, walking back over to Kai. "Perfection cannot be achieved in a day." He handed Kai a cup filled with the warm liquid from the container before returning to his rock to sit and pour himself a cup. As Arden waved his hand to dispel the barrier he had been maintaining, it was clear that he was not inclined to continue their lesson. Kai leaned against the nearest oak tree and slid down to seat himself at its base. Settled on the roots, he began to sip on the warm liquid between small gasps of breath. The drink tasted like honey. Some kind of mead, was Kai's guess. It certainly helped warm his tired muscles. Arden was sipping from his own cup, looking no worse for wear from the long sparring session. As he observed his master, Celeste's comment popped into Kai's head. "Is it true that you're the most powerful mage on the council?" he inquired. Arden appeared taken off guard by the question. "Now where did you hear that?" "Celeste. She also said that the majority of the council sees you that way as well." Arden shrugged. "There are some who believe that. Rangers are often mistaken as more powerful simply because we specialize in attack magic. I personally believe there are mages with far more dangerous talents out there." Kai tilted his head in interest. "Like who?" "Blighters, for one," Arden replied as he poured himself another cup. When he looked back at Kai's confused expression, he clarified. "It's the nickname we call those whose affinity lies with necromancy. They're able to manipulate the souls of the departed, bind them to this world to do their bidding. The spirits become corrupted and angry, turning those who were once people into monsters. It's the reason necromancy is a forbidden art." Kai had heard that necromancy was forbidden before, but hearing the explanation for it made complete sense. It sounded horrific. "Charmers are another particularly dangerous breed," Arden continued, "those whose affinity lies in enchantment magic. Rangers may hit like a hammer, but facing off against one, you'll fight with all you have. With a charmer, however, you won't fight. You won't want to. They'll get inside your head and show you the most beautiful things, places you've longed to see, loved ones long since lost. They will paint you a wonderful world, an inviting world, and you will want to let your guard down, want to let them in. But you can't let them in, because if you do, they will fracture your mind like a mirror, and you'll never be able to put the pieces back together. Those with an affinity for mind manipulation usually also take immense enjoyment in breaking them. It's why Umbree was so dangerous." "Umbree is a charmer?" Arden nodded. "Count your blessings if he never saw fit to use his talents on you, kid. He had a skill for breaking minds. It's the main reason he was considered so powerful in the council." Kai felt a slight chill run up his spine at the thought of what Umbree had been capable of. Umbree had always seemed powerful to him, but hearing Arden talk, he could have shattered him in an instant and left nothing but a shell standing? Knowing that, Kai felt compelled to learn how to defend himself against it. He was determined that Umbree would never hold power over him again. "So, how do you fight back?" Kai inquired. "Is there a spell or something?" Arden shook his head. "The illusion is created in your own head. There is no spell to protect you from your own thoughts." Then, how? It takes a strong mind to fight back against the charmer. You have to destroy the dream, dispel the source of the illusion. No matter how much it hurts, no matter how much you don't want to, you have to. It's the only way to show the truth. Kai nodded, still a little confused as to what Arden meant, but he understood that any fighting against a charmer would have to be done within the illusion itself, mind against mind. Arden got up from his rock and packed his satchel. Well, I think that's enough practice for today. Ready to pack it in? Kai nodded, standing up as well. He was already starting to feel the ache in his muscles from the long sparring session. As they headed back to the tower, Kai couldn't help but think how he usually had trouble getting his mind to quiet at night. But after today's lesson, he could already tell he was going to have no trouble sleeping. And tomorrow was going to be rough. It was well past midnight when Saiyah entered the library. There was not a sound to be heard throughout the castle, a welcome change to the buzzing commotion of the day. Saiyah had finally conceded to studying at night. The constant chatter of her colleagues during daylight hours was driving her mad. That the favorite topic of discussion was still the human acolyte didn't help. Granted, the gossip had died down a bit in the last few months, mainly because so few had even laid eyes on him. Her fellow acolytes were beginning to think he didn't exist, but Saiyah knew he existed, much to her distaste. Trying to talk to Lord Arden about the ruckus he had caused allowing a human to study the arcane arts had been a non-starter. He seemed convinced that the human was fit to be an acolyte, a conclusion Saiyah was having trouble understanding. Saiyah opened the doors to the library, carrying 4 books on astral projection. Maester Luel had told her it took a particularly strong mind to master it, and that it was very advanced magic. If anything, though, that just spurred Saiyah's determination to prove that she could. Saiyah combed the shelves of old, worn spellbooks, looking for any book on magic of the mind that she hadn't consumed yet. She was looking over a rather heavy volume covering the magic of telepathy when a rustle caught her attention. Whilst the silence of the library and the lateness of the hour had made her assume that she was alone, there, seated to her right at the table by the window, sat the living, breathing cause of her frustration. The human was leaning over a book, with several more sprawled out on the table in front of him. He was so completely involved in his studies, he hadn't noticed Saiyah in the library with him. Saiyah ducked behind the shelf she had been perusing, so as not to have to interact with him. She cursed and instantly thought of cutting her losses and heading straight for the door. Just as she was beelining toward the exit, Master Arden's voice popped into her head. "You are merely relaying to me the opinions of others without forming any of your own. If you think he is so unqualified, then talk to him. Tell me in your own words why he is unfit." Saiyah stopped less than 2 feet from the door. She didn't want to speak with the human, but Arden had basically called her mindless, following the opinions of others as though she couldn't think for herself. Saiyah knew that humans were not worthy of studying magic, and if Lord Arden thought a conversation with the human would help to prove that, then so be it. She marched over to where the human sat. He still hadn't noticed her presence till Saiyah blurted out, "Why are you here?" The human jumped slightly from the sudden voice behind him and turned to see Saiyah standing there, chin held high in the proud stance most elves fell into naturally. "I'm sorry?" he questioned, confused by her outburst. "Why are you here?" Saiyah repeated, her patience already spent. "In the library?" "At this castle," Saiyah bit back. "Why are you somewhere you clearly don't belong?" "Force of habit, I suppose. Humans have become rather used to hearing we don't belong. I don't see how this is any different." "Then you are a fool as well," Saiyah hissed. The human gave a long sigh before closing the book he had been reading to grant Saiyah his full attention, muttering under his breath, "I see we're skipping straight past pleasantries." "No human has ever been a mage, and for good reason," Saiyah continued on her rant. "Your kind is weak, fragile, irrational, and short-lived. As such, your attendance here is considered an insult. Do you know what the other mages think of you?" "Very little, I'd imagine," the human replied. "I doubt they would enslave a race they held in high regard." "Clearly, you think no better of mages," Saiyah retorted. "I'm curious why you would wish to become one." "You mean why would a weak, fragile, short-lived human want to learn to defend himself?" Saiyah scoffed. "Oh, I believe we both know your interest in the craft goes beyond mere defense." The human's eyes narrowed in response. "Meaning?" he inquired carefully. Saiyah held her head up, adding in disdain,
I heard what you did, how you viciously attacked your former master, betraying the trust of the one who took care of you.
Took care of me? The human clarified incredulously.
Yes, a most underhanded, brutal act befitting a savage.
Saiyah made no attempt whatsoever to hide her disdain. The human's face contorted in anger. Right. Just so I'm clear, I'm an irrational, fragile, underhanded, savage fool, he clarified. Any other insults to my character I might be missing?
You believe my assessment unjust? Do you deny attacking your former master?
Not at all.
And do you have any justification for your actions?
Many throughout the years, but at that particular moment, it was because he was trying to kill Arden. Saiyah froze. She had not expected that response.
You attacked your master because you were trying to save Lord Arden?
Saiyah asked in confusion. If you can believe it. Though I can understand your skepticism, my lady. I guess that would be pretty out of character for a savage human, after all.
That is not what I...
Saiyah felt her voice shrink as her sentence trailed off. In all the stories she had heard about the human, there had not been one mention of coming to the defense of another. The human shook his head as he stood and collected his books. Of course, I doubt any reason I could offer would justify my actions. Not to the council. Not to you. The human added with ire, staring straight into Saiyah's eyes. After all, you and the other highborns have already decided, right? I just don't belong. The human stepped around Saiyah and headed toward the exit, not sparing even a parting glance as he marched out of the library. Saiyah trudged back to her quarters, deep in thought. Once inside the room, she began slowly pacing, replaying the conversation in her head. He had to be lying, right? There had not been any mention of the human coming to the aid of another, especially not another mage. Not even Lady Luelle had mentioned the human trying to save Lord Arden's life. No, he'd been painted as a villain, a beast. All the stories she had heard couldn't be wrong. After all, humans were quite capable of lashing out in anger. Their emotions tended to get the better of them. That human was no different. He couldn't be. That human was just trying to cover up his offense. That human was just trying to dissuade her. That had to be it. Saiyah stopped pacing for a moment as a wave of awareness washed over her. That human. She had chastised him, called him unworthy, then berated him and made snap judgments about his character. She had bashed his abilities, his demeanor, his race, all based on the stories of humans she had heard swirling around the castle and ones her own family had relayed to her. Now, she was hit with one blunt fact she couldn't deny, causing her to come face to face with her own hypocrisy. That human. She believed she already knew all there was to know about him, when in truth, she had only just realized she didn't even know his name. Umbree was drumming his fingers on a crudely designed table as he sat on a wobbly stool, sipping brandy. He listened to the sound of water drip off stalagmites. His eyes scanned the damp, dark cave he was holed up in. Oh, how the mighty had fallen. He should be decked out in jewels and silks, sitting on pillows instead of crammed into this hovel. But it would be more than worth it if his master could bestow on him his greatest desire. He and his cohorts had been teleported back to Iselia under the council's radar using Auron's power. They were now hiding in a cave just outside the Silver City. Umbree was keeping close tabs on the castle, waiting for his opportunity to sneak in and take hold of the Creation Stone. Luckily, he still had those loyal to him and Auron within the castle walls. Tora had gone off to meet up with one of their allies, while Belthier went to procure more supplies and weapons for their cause. Umbree had been forced to keep a low profile inside this damp cave, since he was currently under suspicion from the council. It was a necessary evil, but still didn't help with his cabin fever. One of the sigils Umbree had placed on the mouth of the cave alerted him that a presence was coming. He quickly stood up and readied an ice ball within his palm for attack. As the shadowy figure came closer, Umbree sighed and dismissed the spell, seeing it was only Tora. Tora stepped into the candlelight and pulled back his hood. He gave a nod to Umbree, noticing the brandy on the table.
Glad to see you're starting to relax,
Tora noted, to which Umbree snorted.
Do I seem relaxed to you?
Umbree grumbled.
Well, you stopped pacing at least,
Tora replied.
I detest being trapped in this rat hole,
Umbree hissed. Tora pulled out some food from his pack and placed it on the table in front of Umbree. That is only temporary, my friend. Umbree snatched at the loaf of bread and quickly changed the subject.
Were you able to meet with our ally?
He asked as he tore into the bread.
Yes, but it's not exactly great news. I heard that the stone was not turned over to the High Council. It is under Arden's protection, somewhere on the council grounds.
Umbree slammed a fist on the table and swore. He had been dreading this scenario. If the stone had been turned over to the council, he would have been able to use his connections to sneak in and reclaim it. But the stone, under Arden's personal protection, complicated things exponentially.
He will be all but impossible to break. Even with the barrier last time, he was formidable to fight.
He's probably hidden the stone in his tower, Tora suggested.
If we can pull him away, we should be able to search for it.
Umbree tightened his fist.
A long shot at best.
There is another option, Tora added. His acolyte might know where he hid it.
Arden has no acolyte,
Umbree replied as he took a sip of brandy.
Huh.
He does now, Tora added with a slight smile. It's Kai.
Umbree froze mid-drink, his eyes wide. The boy?
Umbree clarified. Tora nodded. He survived his injuries, it seems, and Arden took him on as his acolyte, no doubt to spare him from the noose that awaits him on Hellia. Umbree's mind couldn't comprehend what Tora was saying.
You are telling me one of the most powerful mages of our age took on a pathetic, worthless human as his protege?
Tora poured himself a glass of brandy and grabbed himself a slice of bread as well. Apparently, he noted with a shrug. A silence fell over the cavern. Then, slowly, Umbree began chuckling.
My. It seems as though the apple doesn't fall far from the tree,
Umbree stated, grinning.
Arden's father had a soft spot for inferior beings. It seems his son is afflicted with the same weakness, and I fully intend on using that weakness to my advantage. If we cannot find the stone ourselves, then we will use the boy, trade his life in exchange for the stone, and when Arden agrees to the terms, which he undoubtedly will, and delivers the stone to us, we will kill them both.
Umbree leaned over the table and refilled his brandy glass and Tora's in the process. He then held his glass up to Tora in a salute. Tora grinned and held his glass up as well.
A toast, my friend,
Umbree exclaimed,
to killing two birds with one stone.